That evening, Henry Walker wasn't supposed to be inside the Atherton estate at all. He was hired to work security outside. Perimeter patrol. The kind of job where you stay invisible, collect your $200 cash at the end of the night, and go home without anyone remembering your face. But Gwen had called. His daughter's voice cracked through the phone at 7:47 p.m., small and scared. "Dad, Mrs. Chen says she has to leave early. Her mom's sick. Can you come get me?" Henry checked his watch. The gala didn't end until 11 p.m. If he left now, he'd lose the pay, and they needed it. Rent was due in 4 days, and they were still $340 short. "I'm coming, sweetheart, 20 minutes. He informed his supervisor, a broad-shouldered ex-cop named Vickers, who didn't bother hiding his irritation. "You leave, you're not getting paid." "I understand. And don't come back asking for more shifts." Henry nodded. He'd heard worse. He picked up Gwen from Mrs. Chen's apartment, her small hands slipping into his as they walked back toward the bus stop. But the last Route 7 bus had already passed. The next one wouldn't come for another hour. "We can walk, Dad. It's okay." Henry looked down at his daughter, 10 years old, too young to be this understanding, too young to know what it meant when the power company sent a final notice. "No," he said quietly. "We'll take the shortcut." The shortcut meant cutting through the Atherton estate. The back service road was technically private property, but Henry had used it before during his patrol shifts. It would save them 40 minutes. Shadow walked beside him, the old German shepherd's breath steady and calm. The dog had been with Henry for 12 years, through 3 deployments, through the incident that ended both their careers, through the divorce, the custody battle, the move to a 1-bedroom apartment where Gwen slept in the only bedroom and Henry took the couch. Shadow was more than a service dog. He was Henry's anchor, his early warning system, his proof that loyalty still existed in a world that had stopped believing in it. They entered through the service gate, staying close to the hedges. The main estate glowed in the distance. White lights, string quartets, voices that carried the easy confidence of people who'd never worried about rent. Henry moved quietly, Gwen's hand in his, Shadow at his side. They were almost through when a security guard stepped out from the side entrance. "Hey, you can't be here." Henry stopped. "I'm walking my daughter home. We'll be off the property in 2 minutes." The guard's hand moved to his radio. "This is a private event. You need to leave the way you came." "That's a 20-minute detour. We're just passing through." "I don't care. Turn around." Gwen's hand tightened in Henry's. She'd learned to read tension the way other kids read picture books. She knew when her father was about to be treated like a problem. Henry started to turn, but then another voice cut through the night. "What's going on here?" A woman approached, mid-40s, briefing. Alexandra Pierce, CEO of Helix Core Technologies, the host of the gala. The guard straightened. "Found this man and his kid cutting through the property, Miss Pierce." Alexandra's gaze swept over Henry, the worn jacket, the service dog, the cane folded and clipped to his belt. Her expression shifted. Not quite disgust, something colder. Dismissal. Maybe he thought this was a good place to ask for donations. The words landed like a slap. The guard smirked. Another security officer nearby chuckled. Henry felt the heat rise in his chest, but he kept his voice level. "I was hired to work perimeter security tonight. I had to leave early to pick up my daughter. We're just walking home." Alexandra's smile didn't waver. "And you thought the best route was through a private gala?" "It's the fastest route." "It's trespassing." Henry's jaw tightened. Gwen pressed closer to his side. Shadow shifted his weight, his ears rotating forward. Not aggressive, alert. "We'll leave," Henry said quietly. Alexandra turned to the guard. "Make sure they do." She walked away, heels clicking against marble. The guard gestured toward the service gate. "Move." Henry led Gwen back the way they'd come. Neither of them spoke. When they finally reached the main road, Gwen looked up at him. She was mean. Yeah. Why are people like that? Henry didn't have a good answer, so he said what he always said when the world didn't make sense. Because they forget what matters. Shadow stopped walking. Henry felt it immediately. The tension in the leash. The shift in the dog's posture. What is it, boy? Shadow's nose lifted, working the air. His body went still. Not the stillness of rest, the stillness of focus. Henry scanned the area. They were still on the edge of the estate. Service entrance, loading dock. 2 catering vans parked near the back. Everything looked normal, but Shadow's training was absolute. If the dog sensed something, there was something. Henry pulled Gwen closer. Stay with me. Dad? It's okay, just stay close. Shadow growled low, a sound Henry had heard before in places where danger wore civilian clothes. Henry's eyes tracked the loading dock. A man in a waiter's uniform stood near one of the vans. Nothing unusual, except he wasn't moving, wasn't unloading, wasn't doing anything, just standing, watching. Henry's instincts flared. 12 years in counter-surveillance had taught him to read body language. The man's posture was wrong, too stiff. His right hand stayed near his waistband. His eyes tracked the service entrance with the precision of someone calculating timing. Henry pulled out his phone and dialed the security supervisor. Vickers answered on the 3rd ring. What? It's Henry Walker. I'm still on the property, near the loading dock. There's a man in a waiter's uniform acting suspicious. You need to check him. You're calling to report a waiter? I'm calling to report someone who's positioned like he's waiting for an entry window. Vickers sighed. Walker, you're not employed here anymore. Go home. I'm telling you something's wrong. And I'm telling you to stop wasting my time. The line went dead. Henry stared at the phone. Gwen tugged his sleeve. Dad, can we go? Henry looked back at the man, still standing, still watching. Shadow's growl deepened. Henry made a decision. Gwen, I need you to walk to the main road and wait by the bus stop. Take Shadow. Dad, no. It's not a discussion. Go. Now. Gwen's eyes filled with tears, but she knew that tone. She took Shadow's leash and started walking, looking back every few steps. Henry waited until they were out of sight. Then he moved toward the service entrance. He didn't have a weapon, didn't have authority, but he had training, and he had a responsibility to warn people, even people who'd mocked him. He reached the side door and slipped inside. The hallway was empty, polished floors, catering trays stacked on rolling carts. Voices echoed from deeper in the building. Music, laughter. The sound of people who didn't know danger was 20 feet away. Henry moved quickly, his footsteps silent. He reached the main corridor and saw Alexandra standing near a group of investors. She was mid-conversation, gesturing toward a display screen showing Helix Corp's latest security software. Henry approached. Alexandra saw him, and her expression hardened. I thought you were told to leave. There's a man outside, near the loading dock. He's not catering staff. You need to lock down the building. Alexandra's smile was cold. You're trying to tell me how to do security at my own event? I'm trying to keep people safe. One of the investors, a silver-haired man in a tailored suit, stepped forward. Is there a problem here? No problem, Alexandra said smoothly. Just someone who doesn't know when to leave. Henry's frustration spiked. I know what I'm talking about. I was military counter-surveillance for 8 years. That man is waiting for something. And I, Alexandra said, her voice sharp, have paid $50,000 for professional security tonight. I think I'll trust them over a trespasser. The investor's expression shifted, uncomfortable, embarrassed for Henry. Henry felt the weight of it, the dismissal, the assumption, the certainty that someone like him couldn't possibly know more than someone like her. He turned and walked toward the exit. But as he reached the door, Shadow's bark cut through the night. Not the bark of a dog seeing a squirrel, but the bark of a dog detecting a threat. Henry ran. Before we proceed further, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments section, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for being a true member. Let's continue. Henry burst through the side entrance just as the first shot cracked through the air. The sound was sharp and clean, a 9mm, close range. Screams erupted from inside the estate. Henry's training took over. He dropped into a crouch, scanning for the source. The man in the waiter's uniform was gone. The loading dock was empty. Shadow was barking at the service entrance, his body rigid, every muscle coiled. Henry ran toward the door. Inside, chaos. People were running, stumbling over each other. A woman in a silver gown fell, her champagne glass shattering against marble. A man in a tuxedo shoved past two investors, his face pale with panic. Henry pushed against the current, moving toward the center of the room. And then he saw him. The man in the waiter's uniform stood near the main display, gun raised. His hand was shaking, but his eyes were locked on something behind the crowd. Not Alexandra, something else. Henry's mind worked quickly. If the shooter wanted Alexandra, he'd be aiming at her. But he wasn't. He was aiming at the display, at the server rack behind it. This wasn't an assassination, it was sabotage. The man fired again. The bullet punched through the server rack, sparks flying as circuit boards shattered. Security was shouting, trying to organize, but they were too slow, too unprepared. Henry moved. He didn't have a weapon, didn't have backup, but he had Shadow, and Shadow had never failed him. Henry whistled sharp and low. The command he'd used 100 times in situations just like this. Shadow bolted past him, a dark blur of fur and precision. The shooter saw him too late. Shadow launched himself from 10 feet away, 80 pounds of trained momentum. His jaws locked around the shooter's wrist. Not tearing, not biting to injure, biting to control. The gun discharged into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. The shooter hit the ground hard, Shadow on top of him, teeth locked, body weight pinning him down. Henry was there in 3 strides. He grabbed the gun, kicked it across the floor, and dropped his knee into the shooter's back. Shadow, hold. The dog didn't let go. His training was absolute. Henry pulled the shooter's other arm behind his back, using his belt to bind the man's wrists. It wasn't official restraint, but it would hold until police arrived. The room went silent. Alexandra stood frozen near the stage, her face pale. The investors stared. Security finally reached them, weapons drawn, but it was over. Henry stayed on the ground, one hand on Shadow's collar, the other keeping pressure on the shooter. "Someone call 911, Henry said calmly. Nobody moved. Then Alexandra's voice cut through the silence. "Do it!" One of the security guards pulled out his phone. Henry looked up at Alexandra. Their eyes met. For the first time that night, she wasn't looking at him like he was invisible. She was looking at him like he was real. Sirens wailed in the distance. The shooter, whose ID would later reveal his name as Marcus Chen, lay face down on the marble floor, Shadow's jaws still locked around his wrist. The dog's training held. No excessive force, no panic, just controlled, absolute restraint. Henry kept his knee pressed against Chen's back, his voice low and steady. "Don't move. Don't speak." Chen's breathing was ragged, but he didn't resist. Alexandra stood 10 feet away, her arms wrapped around herself. For the first time all night, she looked small. The investors had retreated to the far side of the room. Some were on their phones, others just stared. Security surrounded them now, weapons drawn, faces tight with the realization that they'd almost let a massacre happen on their watch. Vickers, the supervisor who dismissed Henry's warning, stood near the entrance, his expression unreadable. The police arrived in under 4 minutes. 3 patrol cars, tactical unit, detectives right behind them. The lead officer, a woman in her mid-30s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, took in the scene immediately. "Who's the shooter?" Henry nodded toward Chen. "Him. Guns over there." The officer signaled to her team. 2 officers moved to take custody of Chen. Shadow released on Henry's command, backing off 2 steps, his focus still locked on the threat. Another officer approached Henry. "Sir, I need you to stand up slowly and put your hands where I can see them." Henry did as instructed. "I'm not the shooter. I stopped him." "I understand. We still need to secure the scene." Henry was patted down, checked for weapons, then moved to the side while the officers processed Chen. Gwen appeared in the doorway, her face streaked with tears. "Dad!" Henry turned, his heart clenching. "Gwen, I told you to stay outside." "I heard the shots. I thought—" She ran to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Henry held her close, one hand on her head. "It's okay. I'm okay." The lead officer watched the exchange, her expression softening slightly. Alexandra stepped forward. Her voice was quiet, but clear. "He saved us, Henry Walker. He warned us there was a threat. We didn't listen." The officer turned to Alexandra. "You're the host?" "Yes, Alexandra Pierce, Helix Core Technologies." "And you're saying this man," she gestured to Henry, "stopped the shooter?" "Yes." The officer made a note, then looked at Henry. "We're still going to need a full statement, but you're not under arrest." Henry nodded. Chen was hauled to his feet, hands cuffed behind his back. Blood dripped from his wrist where Shadow's teeth had controlled the weapon. But the injury was minimal, precise, professional. As the officers led Chen toward the exit, he turned his head, his eyes locking on Alexandra. "You should have listened to the whistleblower," Chen said, his voice flat. 3 days ago, you had a chance to stop this." Alexandra's face went white. The officer pulled Chen forward. "Keep moving." But the words hung in the air. 3 days ago, a whistleblower. Henry's instincts flared again. This wasn't just a random attack. This was planned, coordinated, and it wasn't over. The detective who interviewed Henry was a man named Marcus Reeves, late 40s, 20 years on the force. He'd seen enough to know when someone was telling the truth. They sat in a side office while the scene was processed. Gwen waited outside with a victim advocate. Shadow lay at Henry's feet, exhausted but alert. "Tell me what you saw," Reeves said. Henry walked him through it. The man at the loading dock, the wrong posture, the positioning, the ignored warning. Reeves made notes. "You said you were military counter-surveillance?" 8 years, K-9 unit. I train dogs to detect threats in civilian environments. "And you're blind?" "Yes." Reeves studied him. "But you saw the shooter." "I didn't need to see him. Shadow saw him. I read Shadow." "That dog out there?" "Yes." Reeves leaned back. "I looked you up while we were waiting. Henry Walker, former Army, honorable discharge, but your records are sealed." Henry's jaw tightened. "That's in the past." "Maybe, but it tells me you're not just some random veteran. You were important enough that someone wanted your file locked." "I did my job. Then I came home." Reeves didn't push. He'd learned when to let things go. "The shooter said something about a whistleblower. 3 days ago. You know anything about that?" "No." "But you heard it?" "Yes." Reeves closed his notebook. "We're going to need to talk to Miss Pierce, but for now you're free to go." Henry stood. "What happens to Chen?" "He's being processed. We'll charge him with attempted murder, destruction of property, maybe terrorism, depending on what we find." "He wasn't trying to kill anyone." Reeves raised an eyebrow. "He fired a gun in a crowded room." "He fired at a server. He was destroying data." Reeves studied him. "You got all that from 10 seconds of observation?" "I got it from 12 years of training." Reeves nodded slowly. "I believe you." Outside, Alexandra was being interviewed by another detective. Henry could see her through the glass. She looked shaken, vulnerable in a way that felt foreign on her. Gwen tugged Henry's hand. "Can we go home now?" "Yeah, sweetheart, we can go." But as they turned to leave, Alexandra's voice stopped them. "Wait." Henry turned. Alexandra approached, her heels clicking softly against the floor. She stopped a few feet away, her hands clasped in front of her. "I owe you an apology." Henry didn't respond. "I was wrong. About you. About everything." "You were scared," Henry said quietly. "People make bad decisions when they're scared." "That's generous." "It's true." Alexandra looked at Gwen, then back at Henry. "Your daughter almost lost you tonight because I didn't listen." "But she didn't. Because you were better than I deserved." Henry met her eyes. For the first time, he saw something real there. Not the polished CEO, not the billionaire host, just a person who'd been forced to see her own failure. "I need to ask you something," Alexandra said. "What Chen said, about a whistleblower. Do you know what he meant?" "No, but you do." Alexandra's face tightened. 3 days ago, someone sent an encrypted message to my office. It said there was a security breach in our system, that someone was planning to destroy our server data during the gala. And you didn't report it. I thought it was a hoax, a competitor trying to sabotage our launch." Henry's expression hardened. "You gambled with people's lives." "I know. And now someone almost died." "I know." Henry started to walk away, but Alexandra's voice stopped him again. "I want to hire you." Henry turned. "What?" "As a security consultant. I need someone who sees things I don't, someone who won't tell me what I want to hear." "I'm not interested." "Please, I'm not trying to buy forgiveness. I'm trying to make sure this never happens again." Henry looked at Gwen, then at Shadow. "I have a daughter. I can't work the hours you'd need. Flexible schedule, remote work when possible, whatever you need." Henry was quiet for a long moment. Then Gwen tugged his sleeve. "She seems nice now." Alexandra blinked. "Now? You were mean before." Henry couldn't help the small smile that tugged at his lips. Alexandra knelt down to Gwen's level. "You're right. I was, and I'm sorry." Gwen studied her, then nodded. "Okay." Alexandra stood looking at Henry. "I'll have my lawyer send over a contract. Look it over. If you don't want it, no hard feelings." Henry didn't commit, but he didn't refuse either. As they walked toward the exit, Shadow stopped short, his ears rotating forward. Henry felt it immediately. "What is it, boy?" Shadow's nose lifted, working the air, and then Henry saw him, a man in a dark suit standing near the parking lot. He wasn't part of the security team, wasn't part of the police presence. He was watching. Henry's instincts screamed, but before he could react, the man turned and disappeared into the shadows. Shadow growled low. Henry pulled Gwen closer. Whatever had just happened inside the estate, it wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The contract arrived the next morning. Henry sat at his kitchen table, Gwen eating cereal across from him, Shadow resting at his feet. The envelope was thick, expensive paper. Helix Core Technologies logo embossed in silver. He opened it and ran his fingers across the Braille summary that had been included. Someone had been thoughtful. $120,000 annual salary. Flexible hours. Remote work allowed. Health benefits for him and Gwen. Vision care. Dental. It was more money than Henry had made in the last 3 years combined. Gwen watched him. "What is it?" "A job offer." "From the mean lady?" Henry smiled slightly. "Yeah." "Are you going to take it?" Henry set the contract down. "I don't know." "Shadow likes her now, I can tell." Henry glanced at the dog. Shadow's tail thumped once against the floor. "You're both conspiring against me." Gwen grinned. Henry's phone buzzed. "Unknown number," he answered. "Hello?" "Mr. Walker, this is Detective Reeves. Do you have a minute?" "Yeah." "We finished processing the scene. Found something you should know about." "What?" "The server Chen shot wasn't random. It contained encrypted files related to a $30 million investor deal Helix Core was closing last night. He was destroying evidence." "That's what we think. But here's the strange part. The files were already deleted before Chen fired the shot. His attack was a distraction." Henry's grip tightened on the phone. Someone else was in the building. That's our theory. We're reviewing security footage now. And Alexandra? She's cooperating, but she's scared. Says she doesn't know who she can trust in her own company. Henry was quiet for a moment. I'll call you back. He hung up and stared at the contract. Gwen tilted her head. Dad? I think the mean lady needs help. Henry called Alexandra directly. She answered on the second ring. Hello? It's Henry Walker. A pause. Henry, hi. I talked to Detective Reeves. He told me about the files. Alexandra's voice tightened. So you know. I know someone used Chen as a distraction. I know you have a leak inside your company. I don't know who to trust anymore. Then trust someone outside your circle. Another pause. You'll take the job? On one condition. Anything. I investigate this my way. No interference. No corporate politics. You give me access to everything, and I'll find out who's trying to destroy your company. Done. I'll need full security clearances, server access, personnel files, everything. I'll have it ready by tomorrow. Henry hesitated. And one more thing. What? Fire your current security team. Silence. Alexandra? They've been with me for 5 years. And they failed, spectacularly. You need people who know what they're doing. I'll think about it. Don't think, decide, because whoever's behind this isn't done. Henry started work 2 days later. Helix Corps headquarters was a glass and steel tower in downtown Palo Alto. 30 floors, state-of-the-art security, biometric scanners, encrypted elevators, and yet someone had walked right through it all. Henry entered with Shadow at his side. The receptionist tried to smile, but her eyes kept drifting to the service dog. Mr. Walker, Miss Pierce is expecting you. 30th floor. Henry nodded and moved toward the elevator. Inside, he ran his fingers along the braille panel, pressed 30, and waited. Shadow sat calmly, but Henry could feel the tension in the leash. The dog sensed something. Not immediate danger, but something off. The elevator opened into a sleek office suite, floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, a panoramic view of the Bay Area. Alexandra stood near the window, her back to him. Henry. Alexandra. She turned. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes. Her usual polish was gone. Thank you for coming. I'm here to work, not make you feel better. A faint smile. Fair enough. She gestured to a conference table. I've compiled everything you asked for. Personnel files, server logs, security footage, all of it. Henry moved to the table, Shadow at his side. He ran his fingers over the documents, braille summaries, audio files, tactile diagrams. Who knew about the server files? Henry asked. Me, my CFO, my CTO, and my VP of operations. That's 4 people. Yes, one of them is working against you. Alexandra's face paled. I've known these people for years. People change when money's involved. Henry pulled out a tablet with audio interface and began running through the personnel files. Names, positions, access levels. Then he stopped. Jacob Mercer, VP of Operations. Jacob's been with me since the beginning. He was passed over for a promotion 3 months ago. How do you know that? It's in his file. He applied for CTO. You gave it to someone else. Alexandra's expression tightened. He wasn't qualified. Did you tell him that? I tried to let him down gently, so he felt humiliated. Henry, Jacob wouldn't. Where was he during the gala? Alexandra hesitated. I don't know. Then find out. It took 6 hours to pull the security footage. Henry sat in a dark conference room, listening to the audio descriptions of the video files. Alexandra sat across from him, her arms crossed. There, Henry said. Timestamp 8:23 p.m. Who's that entering the server room? Alexandra leaned forward. That's Jacob. And what's he carrying? A laptop bag. Was he authorized to be in that area during the gala? No. Henry leaned back. Then we have our insider. Alexandra's hands trembled. Jacob's been my friend for 8 years. He's not your friend. He's your saboteur. What do? We confront him, but carefully. If he knows we're onto him, he'll destroy evidence. Alexandra nodded. I'll call him in tomorrow. No, we do it today, now. Henry, every minute we wait is another minute he has to cover his tracks. Alexandra stared at him, then pulled out her phone. Jacob, it's Alexandra. I need you in my office, now. Jacob Mercer arrived 20 minutes later. He was in his early 40s, confident stride, easy smile, the kind of man who'd learned to mask ambition with charm. Alexandra, Henry, what's this about? Alexandra gestured to a chair. Sit. Jacob's smile faded slightly. Is something wrong? Henry spoke before Alexandra could. Where were you at 8:23 p.m. during the gala? Jacob's eyes flicked to Henry, then back to Alexandra. I was supervising the server migration. You knew that. Were you authorized to access the secure server room during the event? I had clearance. That's not what I asked. Jacob's jaw tightened. What is this? An interrogation? Alexandra leaned forward. Someone deleted the investor files during the gala, the same files Marcus Chen tried to destroy. And you think it was me? Were you in the server room at 8:23 p.m.? Jacob stood. I'm not answering any more questions without a lawyer. Henry rose as well. Shadow's ears perked up. That's your right, Henry said calmly. But you should know we have security footage. We have access logs. And we have your laptop activity tracked down to the second. Jacob's face went pale. So here's what's going to happen, Henry continued. You're going to sit back down. You're going to tell us who you're working with. And you're going to pray that cooperation reduces your sentence. Jacob didn't move. Then slowly he sank back into the chair. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Alexandra's voice was barely a whisper. Jacob, what did you do? They approached me 6 months ago, offered me $5 million to steal the encryption protocols. I just needed to create a window, a distraction. So you hired Chen to shoot up the gala? No, I hired him to cause a scene, fire a few shots into the ceiling, scare people. I didn't know he'd go after the servers. You put a gun in a crowded room and expected control? Jacob's face crumpled. You didn't think people would die? Henry's voice was cold. You didn't think your greed would cost lives? Jacob looked at Alexandra. I'm sorry. Alexandra stood. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. You're fired, and I'm pressing charges. Jacob's eyes widened. Alexandra, please, get out. Security escorted Jacob from the building 10 minutes later. Detective Reeves arrived with a warrant 30 minutes after that. Henry watched from the window as Jacob was loaded into a police car. Alexandra stood beside him, silent. You okay? Henry asked. No. You will be. She looked at him. How do you do it? Stay calm when everything's falling apart. Practice. A faint smile. That's not comforting. It's not meant to be. Alexandra's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then frowned. What is it? Henry asked. Unknown number, she answered. Hello? Her face went white. Alexandra? Henry stepped closer. She handed him the phone. A distorted voice spoke through the speaker. That wasn't the only file we wanted destroyed. The line went dead. Shadow growled low. Henry's instincts screamed. This wasn't over. Henry handed the phone back to Alexandra. Call Reeves. Tell him about the call. Alexandra nodded, but her hands were shaking. She could barely hold the phone. Henry took it from her gently and dialed the detective himself. Reeves answered on the first ring. Walker, we just got a threat. Someone called Alexandra's phone, said there are more files they want destroyed. Did you trace the call? Unknown number, likely burner phone. Reeves swore under his breath. I'll send a tech team to analyze it. In the meantime, Alexandra needs protection. I'm already on it. Henry hung up and turned to Alexandra. Pack a bag. You're not staying here tonight. What? This building has state-of-the-art security. Jacob had access to this building, which means whoever hired him might have access too. You're compromised. Where am I supposed to go? Somewhere they won't think to look. 2 hours later, Alexandra sat in Henry's one-bedroom apartment, staring at the worn couch in the peeling wallpaper with an expression somewhere between disbelief and horror. This is where you live? This is where Gwen and I live, and it's safe. Gwen appeared from the bedroom, rubbing her eyes. Dad, why is the lady here? She's staying with us for a few days. Someone's trying to hurt her. Gwen processed this, then nodded solemnly. She can have my bed. I'll sleep with you. Alexandra blinked. I can't take your bed. It's okay. Dad says we help people who need it. Henry felt something tighten in his chest. Alexandra knelt down. Thank you, Gwen. Gwen studied her. You're not mean anymore, right? I'm trying not to be. Good, because Shadow doesn't like mean people. As if on cue, Shadow walked over and rested his head on Alexandra's knee. She hesitated, then reached out to pet him. The dog's tail wagged slowly. He's beautiful, Alexandra said softly. He's family, Henry corrected. That night, Henry sat at the kitchen table, reviewing the files Alexandra had given him. Audio descriptions played through his earpiece. Names, transactions, server logs. Alexandra sat across from him, nursing a cup of tea that had gone cold. I don't understand, she said. If Jacob already stole the encryption protocols, why threaten me now? Because there's something else they want, something you haven't figured out yet. Like what? That's what we need to determine. Henry paused the audio and turned to her. Walk me through the investor deal, from the beginning. Alexandra set down her tea. 6 months ago, I was approached by Sentinel Capital. They wanted to invest $30 million in exchange for a 15% stake in Helix Corp. That's a lot of money for 15%. Our valuation was $200 million. It was fair. Who approached you? Their managing partner, Richard Castellano. Henry's fingers stilled on the tablet. Richard Castellano, former CIA? Yes, how did you know? Because I worked with him 12 years ago in Afghanistan. Alexandra's eyes widened. You knew him? I knew what he was capable of. Henry's voice was flat. He wasn't CIA. He was a contractor, private security, the kind that operates in gray areas. What kind of gray areas? The kind where people disappear and nobody asks questions. Alexandra's face paled. Henry, he seemed legitimate. He had references, a track record. His firm manages over $2 billion in assets. I'm sure he does. Castellano was always good at building cover stories. Henry pulled up a search on his tablet, the audio interface reading aloud the results. Sentinel Capital, founded 8 years ago, headquarters in Zurich, managing partner Richard Castellano, board members, wait, what? One of the board members is Marcus Vance. Should I know that name? Marcus Vance was the logistics coordinator for the operation that ended my career. He was the one who blamed me and Shadow when things went wrong. Alexandra stood. Henry, this can't be a coincidence. It's not. This was personal from the start. But why target Helix Corp? Why target me? Henry was quiet for a moment. Then, what does your security software do? It uses AI to predict and prevent security breaches in corporate environments. And if someone wanted to bypass corporate security systems, they'd need to know how your AI works. Alexandra's eyes widened. They're not trying to destroy Helix Corp. They're trying to steal the entire system. And then what? Then they could sell it, or use it themselves. Henry, if they have access to our AI, they could infiltrate any corporation in the world. Banks, governments, defense contractors. How much would that be worth? Billions, tens of billions. Henry leaned back. Jacob gave them the encryption protocols, but that's not enough. They need the core algorithm, the one you haven't uploaded to any server. How did you know that? Because you're smart enough not to trust your own system after a breach. Alexandra pulled out her phone. The algorithm is stored on an isolated drive, in my personal safe, at home. Then that's what they're coming for. They arrived at Alexandra's estate at 2 a.m. The property was dark, no lights, no security patrol. Henry felt Shadow tense beside him. Something's wrong, Henry said. My security team should be here. They're not. Henry pulled out his phone and called Reeves. Walker, it's 2 a.m. We're at Alexandra's estate. Security's gone. I think someone's inside. Don't go in. I'm sending units now. If we wait, they'll take what they came for and disappear. Henry, I'm going in. He hung up. Alexandra grabbed his arm. You can't. You don't have backup. You don't have weapons. I have Shadow, and I have 12 years of training in situations exactly like this. You're blind. I see more than most people. Henry moved toward the entrance, Shadow at his side. The dog's ears were forward, his body low and controlled. The front door was unlocked. Henry pushed it open slowly, listening. Silence. But not empty silence. The kind of silence where people are holding their breath. Henry signaled Shadow. The dog moved ahead, nose working, body scanning for threats. They cleared the entryway, the living room, the hallway. Then Shadow stopped. Henry felt it. Movement. Second floor. He unclipped Shadow's leash and gave the command. Find. Shadow moved like smoke, up the stairs. No sound except the faint click of claws on hardwood. Henry followed, his hand trailing the wall, his other hand holding a tactical flashlight Alexandra had grabbed from her emergency kit. At the top of the stairs, Shadow growled. Henry heard it then. Voices. 2 men, coming from Alexandra's office. Got it, let's move. Castellano wants confirmation first. Henry's blood went cold. He pulled out his phone and texted Alexandra, who'd stayed at the entrance as he'd ordered. 2 men, office, armed, stay outside. Then he moved. Shadow was already at the office door, body coiled. Henry gave the signal. Shadow, storm. The command he'd only used twice in their entire career together. Shadow exploded through the door. The men inside shouted. One reached for his weapon. Shadow hit him center mass, 80 pounds of controlled aggression. The man went down hard, his gun skittering across the floor. The second man raised his weapon toward Shadow. Henry was already moving. He swept low, his leg catching the man's knee. The joint buckled. The man fell. Henry was on him in a second, his elbow across the man's throat. Don't move. The man struggled, but Henry applied pressure. Not enough to crush, enough to control. Shadow had the first man pinned, jaws locked on his wrist. Henry heard sirens in the distance. It's over, Henry said. Police are 30 seconds out. The man beneath him went limp. Detective Reeves arrived with 6 units. The 2 men were arrested. Neither spoke, both immediately lawyered up. But in their possession was the isolated drive from Alexandra's safe, the one with the core algorithm. Reeves held it up. This it? Alexandra nodded, her face pale. That's everything. If they'd gotten away with it. They didn't, Henry said quietly. Reeves turned to him. You went in blind. No backup, no weapon. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. You're lucky. I'm trained. Reeves studied him for a moment, then nodded. We'll need statements from both of you. Tomorrow, Henry said. She's had enough for one night. Reeves looked at Alexandra, then nodded. Tomorrow. Back at Henry's apartment, Gwen was still asleep. Alexandra sat on the couch, her hands wrapped around a fresh cup of tea. This one she actually drank. "Thank you," she said quietly. Henry sat across from her, shadow at his feet. "You already thanked me. I mean, for not giving up on me, even after how I treated you. You made a mistake. You owned it. That's more than most people do." "Is it enough?" "Depends. Are you going to make the same mistake again?" "No." "Then it's enough." Alexandra looked at Shadow. "He's incredible. The way he moved, the precision. He's like a weapon." "He's not a weapon. He's a guardian. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "A weapon destroys. A guardian protects. Shadow's never once hurt anyone who didn't pose a threat. Even tonight, he controlled those men without causing serious injury." "How did you train him to do that?" "I didn't train him to do anything. I taught him to think, to assess, to respond proportionally. Everything else came from him." Alexandra reached down and stroked Shadow's head. The dog's tail thumped against the floor. "I wish I had someone like him," Alexandra said softly. "You do," Henry said. "You have a company full of people who believed in your vision. You just need to start trusting them." "Even after Jacob?" "Especially after Jacob. One person betrayed you. That means dozens of others didn't." Alexandra smiled faintly. "When did you become a therapist?" "When I became a single father." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Alexandra's phone rang. She checked the screen. Unknown number. Henry's hand moved to Shadow's collar. Alexandra answered. "Hello?" The distorted voice spoke. "You're making this harder than it needs to be, Miss Pierce." "Who is this?" "Someone who's given you multiple opportunities to walk away." "I'm not walking away from my company." "Then you'll lose everything." The line went dead. Alexandra's hands trembled. Henry took the phone from her. "That was a mistake." "What?" "They called to threaten you, which means they're worried, which means we're close." "Close to what?" "To figuring out what they really want." Henry spent the next morning analyzing the call. Reeves sent over the audio file. Henry ran it through voice analysis software, looking for patterns. And then he found it. Background noise. Faint. Almost imperceptible. But there, a rhythmic beeping. Medical equipment. Henry called Reeves. "The call came from a hospital." "You sure?" "I'm sure. Run a check on Richard Castellano. See if he's been admitted anywhere in the past 48 hours. Reeves called back 20 minutes later. "Stanford Medical Center. Heart attack. Admitted yesterday morning." "Private room?" "Suite, top floor. He's vulnerable and scared. That's why he's pushing so hard." "You think he'll talk?" "I think he'll make a mistake." Henry and Alexandra arrived at Stanford Medical Center at noon. Reeves met them in the lobby. "He's lawyered up, won't speak to anyone." "He'll speak to me," Henry said. "Why would he do that?" "Because I'm the one who got away." They took the elevator to the top floor. Two uniformed officers stood outside Castellano's suite. Reeves showed his badge. "We're going in." The officers stepped aside. Inside, Richard Castellano lay in a hospital bed. He was in his 60s now, gray hair, weathered face, but his eyes were still sharp. He saw Henry and smiled. "Walker, I wondered when you'd show up." "Castellano, you look good. Blind life suits you." Henry moved closer. "Why Helix Core?" "Because I could." "That's not an answer." Castellano's smile faded. "You ruined my career, Walker. That operation in Kandahar. I lost everything because you reported what you saw." "I reported war crimes. You reported business. You killed civilians. I did what needed to be done, and you destroyed me for it." Henry's voice was cold. "So this was revenge?" "No, this was justice. I built Sentinel Capital from nothing, spent 8 years creating the perfect cover, and then I found Helix Core, the perfect target, military-grade security software, worth billions, and run by someone naive enough to trust me. Alexandra stepped forward. You were never going to invest. Of course not. I was going to steal everything and sell it to the highest bidder, and you would have been left with nothing, just like Walker left me. You failed, Henry said. Castellano laughed, but it turned into a cough. When he recovered, his smile was gone. Did I? Check your company's stock price, Miss Pierce. Check your investor calls. Check your reputation. Alexandra pulled out her phone. Her face went pale. What is it? Henry asked. The story broke. Investors are pulling out. Stocks down 40%. The board is calling for an emergency meeting. Castellano's smile returned. I didn't need to steal your algorithm, Miss Pierce. I just needed to destroy your credibility. And I did. Alexandra stood frozen in the hospital corridor, staring at her phone. Email after email. Text after text. Investors demanding explanations. Board members calling for her resignation. News articles with headlines like, Helix Core CEO's security gala ends in shooting. And, is Helix Core's technology safe? Her hands trembled. Henry guided her to a chair. Sit. It's over. He won. Even from a hospital bed, he destroyed everything I built. He didn't destroy anything. He just exposed what was already broken. Alexandra looked up at him. What are you talking about? Your company was built on image, on the promise that your technology was perfect. But nothing's perfect. And when people believe in perfection, they panic when they see a crack. So, what do? You tell the truth. The truth? The truth is my VP tried to steal from me. My security failed. A man with a gun walked into my event. The truth makes me look incompetent. Henry knelt in front of her. The truth is you made mistakes. You trusted the wrong people. But when everything fell apart, you didn't run. You didn't hide. You faced it. That's what people need to hear. Nobody wants to hear about failure. Everyone wants to hear about resilience. Alexandra stared at him. Shadow moved closer, resting his head on her knee. She stroked his fur, silent. Then she stood. I need to call an emergency board meeting. The board meeting was held that afternoon via video conference. 12 faces on 12 screens, all of them cold, all of them angry. Alexandra stood in Henry's apartment, her laptop propped on the kitchen table. Henry sat beside her, out of frame. Shadow lay at their feet. Gwen watched from the bedroom doorway, sensing something important was happening. The board chairman, Marcus Whitfield, spoke first. Alexandra, we've seen the news. We've heard from investors. We need answers. I'll give you answers, but first, I need you to understand something. Helix Core was attacked, not by amateurs, by professionals. People who spent months planning how to destroy us. And they succeeded, one board member said. Our stock is in free fall. Because we built our reputation on perfection instead of honesty. The screens went silent. We promised our clients that our system was unhackable, Alexandra continued. We promised them that our AI would prevent every breach. But that was a lie. Not because our technology doesn't work, but because no technology is perfect. Then what are we selling? Another board member demanded. Resilience, adaptation, the ability to respond when something goes wrong, because something will always go wrong. And when it does, the question isn't whether you had perfect security, it's whether you had people smart enough to fix it. People like who? Alexandra glanced at Henry. He nodded. People like Henry Walker, a blind veteran who saw a threat my entire security team missed. A man I mocked and dismissed. A man who saved lives while my systems failed. Whitfield leaned forward. You're saying we should have hired him from the beginning. I'm saying we should have listened. To him, to the whistleblower, to anyone who wasn't telling us what we wanted to hear. And moving forward? Moving forward, I'm restructuring our security division. I'm implementing external audits. And I'm hiring Henry Walker as our chief security consultant. The board members exchanged glances. Can we afford him? Someone asked. Can we afford not to? Silence. Then Whitfield spoke. We'll need to see a full plan, with projections, and proof that this won't happen again. You'll have it by Monday. Then we'll reconvene then. But Alexandra, understand this. You're on thin ice. One more mistake and we'll have no choice but to replace you. I understand. The call ended. Alexandra closed her laptop and exhaled. That went better than expected, Henry said. They're going to fire me. Maybe, but you told them the truth. That's all you can do. Alexandra looked at him. You're really good at this. At what? Seeing the way through when everything's falling apart. I had good teachers. Who? Henry gestured to Shadow. A dog, and a 7-year-old girl who reminds me every day that people can change if they want to. That evening, Henry walked Shadow through the neighborhood. Gwen had fallen asleep early, exhausted from the stress of the past few days. Alexandra was on reviewing financial reports on the couch, her phone mercifully silent for the first time in 48 hours. The air was cool, quiet. Shadow walked beside Henry, his pace steady but slower than it used to be. Henry felt it, the dog's age, the toll of the past week. You did good, boy, Henry said quietly, but I think it's time you retired for real. Shadow's tail wagged. They reached a small park and sat on a bench. Henry's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He tensed, then answered. Hello? But this time the voice wasn't distorted. It was clear, calm. Henry Walker, this is Captain Sarah Mendez, U.S. Army Intelligence. I'm calling about your service record. Henry's grip tightened on the phone. My record is sealed. It is, but I have clearance, and I need to speak with you about an operation. I'm retired. I know, this isn't about active duty. This is about Richard Castellano. Henry's blood went cold. What about him? He's part of something bigger than Helix Corps. We've been tracking his network for 2 years. Corporate espionage, arms dealing, blackmail. He's connected to operations in 12 countries. Then arrest him. We need him to lead us to the others, and we need someone who knows how he operates. You need me. Yes. Henry was quiet for a long moment. I have a daughter. I know, we can work around your schedule, but Henry, if we don't stop this network, Castellano's operation will keep destroying companies, keep hurting people, and eventually someone's going to die. Henry closed his eyes. He thought about Alexandra, about the fear in her eyes when her company was collapsing. He thought about Gwen, about the world she was growing up in. He thought about Shadow, about the years they'd spent protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. I'll think about it, Henry said. I need an answer by Monday. The call ended. Shadow rested his head on Henry's knee. What do you think, boy? One more mission? Shadow's tail thumped once. That night, Henry sat at the kitchen table while Gwen and Alexandra slept. He pulled out a small box from under the couch. Inside were his old military commendations, his discharge papers, a photo of him and Shadow in uniform, both of them younger, both of them still believing the world made sense. He stared at the photo for a long time. Then his phone buzzed. A text from Alexandra. Can't sleep. You awake? Henry typed back. Yeah. A moment later, she appeared from the bedroom, wrapped in one of Gwen's oversized hoodies. Sorry, didn't mean to wake you. You didn't. I don't sleep much anymore. She sat down across from him. What's that? Henry gestured to the photo. My past. Alexandra studied it. You look different. I was different. What changed? Everything. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I got a call from Whitfield. He said 3 investors want back in. They saw my statement, said it made them believe in the company again. That's good. It's because of you. It's because of you. You told the truth when it would have been easier to lie. Alexandra smiled faintly. I learned that from someone. Henry met her eyes. I got a call too, he said. Military intelligence. They want me to help take down Castellano's network. Are you going to do it? I don't know. What's holding you back? Gwen, I promised her I was done with that life. But I also promised her I'd make the world safer for her. And I can't do that by sitting still. Alexandra reached across the table and took his hand. Whatever you decide, you'll make the right choice, because that's who you are. Henry looked at their joined hands. For the first time in years, he felt something shift. Not certainty, but possibility. Monday morning arrived. Henry called Captain Mendez. I'll help, but on my terms. What terms? I consult remotely when possible. I bring my dog, and if my daughter needs me, I walk away. No questions. A pause. Then, agreed. One more thing. What? I want Alexandra Pierce cleared of any investigation. Her company was a target. She's not a suspect. Done. Henry hung up. Alexandra stood in the doorway, dressed in a sharp suit, ready to face her board. You're doing it, she said. Yeah, you're terrifying. You know that? I've been told, she smiled. Thank you, Henry, for everything. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. You reminded me what it means to stand up when everyone else is sitting down. Henry stood and extended his hand. Alexandra shook it. Then impulsively, she pulled him into a hug. Henry stiffened, then relaxed. When they pulled apart, Gwen was standing in the hallway, grinning. I knew you'd be friends. 3 weeks later, Henry stood in the same plaza where everything had started. But this time, he wasn't being dismissed. He was being honored. The mayor presented him with a civilian commendation. Alexandra stood beside him, her company stabilized, her reputation stronger than before. Gwen held Shadow's leash, beaming with pride. The crowd applauded. Reporters asked questions, but Henry didn't hear any of it. He was watching the edges of the plaza, the places where danger hides. Because that's what he did. That's who he was. A guardian, not a weapon. And as long as Shadow walked beside him, as long as Gwen believed in him, as long as people like Alexandra were willing to change, the world was worth protecting. 6 months later, Henry Walker sat in his new office, not at Helix Corps. He'd declined Alexandra's offer to work in-house. Instead, he'd opened his own consulting firm, Walker Security Solutions, specialized in counter-surveillance, threat assessment, training programs for service dogs and their handlers. Gwen did her homework at a desk in the corner, Shadow asleep at her feet. Henry's phone rang. Walker Security. Mr. Walker, this is Senator Patricia Chen. I'm calling about a security concern at the Capitol. Henry smiled. The work was never done. But for the first time in years, he wasn't running from his past. He was building a future, one case at a time, one truth at a time, one choice at a time, and that was enough. That evening, as Henry walked Gwen home from school, she asked him a question. Dad, are you a hero? Henry thought about it, about Alexandra, who'd learned to see past appearances, about Castellano, now facing federal charges, about Shadow, who'd given everything and asked for nothing, about Gwen, who reminded him every day why the fight mattered. No, sweetheart, I'm just someone who pays attention when others don't. That sounds like a hero to me, Henry smiled. Then maybe we're all heroes. We just have to choose to be. Shadow's tail wagged, and they walked home together. A family, a team, a force for good in a world that needed it.